I want to welcome all of you to Diversity TV. My name is Tabitha Biel, and the topic that we are going to be discussing today is why our people, both men and women, our young people, going back home rather than finding someone here.
This, I think, is there's so many variables that that affect why people make that decision. But if you're looking at, I would just want to look at one of the few that I think are more, I don't want to use the word rampant, but that affect us a lot, I guess, more on a psychological level. And one of them has to be, the familiar territory. When hunters go hunting, they usually just do it in places that they're familiar with. And so we have this, thing that is sort of a pride thing, not in a bad way, but that we identify with, being African. And so we tend to, even when we're here, right, we tend to try and look for people that we identify with. You go to a mall and, there's a lot of people there. You don't even acknowledge them, but you see one Black person, what do? You're like, you just recognize each other, even if you don't say words, but just right. That feeling of, I know this person and they identify with me in this place. So we tend to want to, even when we go for, parties, functions, we generally go and be among people that we identify with. And it's part of the culture and, how we were raised. And the other point that ties into that is also, our perception and worldview. I would say, which is again measured by, the environment that we grew up in. And, so that worldview was influenced and molded, by society, the society that we grew up with. And we're talking about the generation that, our generation, and, because I'm thinking, I got kids here born in Canada, and I don't see any of them thinking about, oh, I need to get married, I need to go back to Africa. You know what I mean? Because they don't identify with Africa. But we do identify with Africa because we grew up in that environment. And the idea of what a good woman is, what a good man is, who then becomes, a good husband, is also affected by those factors. And that identity, what we grew up being told, even in our own environment in Africa, we just don't go to certain tribes or certain areas, to marry. We still select it within that. We still go into that, shaft, that channel, and we go and pick out because of, what the society around us told us is the right thing. If you want a wife, so if you want a husband, these are the right people. And so that has affected how we think about this. The other point I want to make is, there's a lot more to say on this particular point, but I just want to, just give you like a brief run through. The other thing is family influence. Okay, a lot of our decisions when it comes to marriage are influenced by our family, our parents, our mothers especially. Our mothers seem to have a lot more to say about this issue than most.
Mhm.
I don't want that woman from that village, and I want you to be married by a man who has a degree. It's and so we grew up, around these ideas. And so when we come here to Canada, the other question that sort of gets raised is, do we find people for love, or what are people? So I talk to a lot of people, and it's amazing that a lot of people are in marriages not because they were in love with the person, but they did it because it was, quote unquote, necessary, or they felt that, at this age, I need to marry, I should have a wife, I should have a husband. And, or their parents were like, when are you going to get married? We're tired of you not getting married, And so they go through that pressure. And so the idea of people finding people here in Canada, and like, like there's a statement in the question that says, there are people in our backyard. Why do we leave, the angels? And, that's debatable about angels, but, why do we leave angels here and then we go back home? And the reason is there's people to love here. That's true. But unless we, deal with that mindset, which over time, the longer we stay here, though, it gets eroded eventually. Because I mean, our children, we might keep holding on to it and try and shove it down their throats that you need to go back to Africa and get a wife, because we know where the wives are and where the husbands are. But eventually it's going to get eroded. But I think when you look at it right now, these are some of the, so I said, I think I mentioned 3 points there, just to recap. Familiar territory, right? So we feel better going back to places that we identify with. And the other point was, our perception worldview, which is determined usually or cultivated by the society that we grew up in, right? And so that's why you find, even when you came to Canada, if you're Kenyan or you're Ghanaian, you're Zimbabwean, I'm Zimbabwean, and I just gravitated toward Zimbabweans. I was looking for Zimbabweans. Who do I know? Who do I, And so then a lot of people that I know are Zimbabweans, Black Africans that I know here in Canada. And so that happens. And then the last point was the family influence, which for most people plays a very big part. What our parents, what our parents are. So yeah, I think in a nutshell, that would be some of. I mean, there's so many things that we could talk about, but I think I could just leave it right there and say those are some of the things that I look at based on the experience that I've had with people, going through this I don't know if I can say phenomena, but this type of experience.
Thanks, Clive, for those very good pointers. And I want to agree with most of them. I don't think there are very many different reasons. Most of the reasons rotate around almost the same, factors. But I would also want to say, because we are different, we really have, even though we come from, our beautiful continent, Africa, but Africa is huge, and we have really different cultural perspectives. We have different personalities. We have, different worldviews and mindsets, and all those factors come into play. So when Diversity TV approached me and asked me about the reasons why, really asked me to be a part of this conversation, I actually did some research, and there is not a lot of research papers or even journals that really speak about these things, which even emphasizes, the need. It emphasizes more why we need to have conversations such as this, or even write about it. I did, though, go ahead and ask if I'm married, but I did not. I came to Canada and when I was already married, so I did not have that personal experience. But I know a lot of people in my community that have, gone through that same experience. So I took a minute and tried to, randomly ask them, why they felt the need to, to go back. And really, everybody had slightly different reasons, but there was, again, very many similarities. And one of those were some of what Clive has just shared with us. The brain likes to deal or entertain things that they are already familiar with. So that's why when we're trying a new thing, like when we're trying to maybe to work on a new project or try a new habit, it feels extremely hard, because really it's a strange idea to the brain. Whereas if you're involving in something that you have always done, like for example, Tabitha, if you are the host of Diversity TV, when you come on set, it's as easy as maybe eating food, right? Yet if it was another person who has been given that a project to run, it could feel, and they've never done it before, it could feel extremely hard. So likewise, I think when it comes to finding somebody who we want to spend the rest of our lives, we really like to, our brain kind of sends those messages, and we find ourselves really wanting to go back to, you know, the place that is familiar to us. There is the fear of the unknown, you know. There's an old saying that goes that the devil you know is better than the angel that you do not know. So most people that move to the Western world but move when they're a little bit older, for example, they've spent maybe the first 15, 20 years or even 30 years of their lives in a different place. You know, sometimes it may feel like they are not aware or they don't know the culture here. They have a limited understanding of, you know, how, you know, people run their lives in this part of the world. So that's why when they're thinking of, you know, getting into something as intimate and maybe long-term situations such as marriage, they probably find themselves going back home.
Perfect.
I think another reason is also the precedence, what we've seen other people do, right? So because maybe I have an older brother or an older sister who has gotten into who has done this before, I may find myself, you know, stepping in their own in the same shoes.
The problem is our people, and this is really going on a lot in my community. I'm from Sierra Leone, and I'm married to a South Sudanese. So, you know,
I'm
yeah,
Sudanese.
I really am. I can tell my
Yes, yeah.
yes.
Go on, girl.
Yeah, so there's a lot of pressure, you know, just like as Clive mentioned earlier, you know, pressure from our family members, even back home, you know, to marry somebody from our, you know, tribe or from our country. So it's hard, but a lot of people leave here going home to find a partner because they think they will get something better than what is already available here.
Exactly.
You know, because one, they know some of the women, you know, what they've done before. Some have broken marriages before, you know, and they know and they don't want to be a part of that. And, you know, and I think this is also a systemic thing because, you know, in Canada, the upbringing is different than what we're used to in Africa. So in Africa, you know, it's mostly the men who are like the breadwinners of the family, even though that is changing now in Africa.
Yeah.
But and being here, it's you know, it's both men and women both work and provide for the family. So because again I went around asking a few members of our community, you know, before joining in, what is some of the issues, especially with the men. And the thing they say is that in Canada, they find that they are not needed, you know, like in like as in Africa, where you know over there the man is the, you know, everything in the house. Like you listen to your husband, you follow everything they say. You know, here it's more like a want. And because some of the women, when they are working and they are making their own money, and they're more independent here than in Africa, where you are kind of dependent on the husband. So those are some of the things that, you know, make relationships hard here. There are people who come here with their partner and they end up breaking up because of that. So, you know, you can go to Africa and bring a partner, but then you're coming back into this system and things can change. So I think what we can do as a community is that we need to get back to our roots, which is Africa, where we were raised. You know, when we have problems in our relationship, usually we go to the elders and they come and they, you know, they try to talk it out and see what is the issue here. I find here sometimes, you know, women don't partners don't do that. You know, they just make up their mind and they, you know, they separate and things like that. So we need to go back to our roots where we try to incorporate our culture. We try to see how we can blend it in with this culture here. I think that will help us a whole lot. And also, you know, it really doesn't matter. You going home and you getting a partner here, the same thing can happen. So I think for us to find a way how to, you know, find a partner here is that we have to be open and you know, be willing to, yes, it's sometimes you get heartbreak or something, but you have to be willing to fall in love with people. Yeah, don't just listen. You know, there are relationships that break up because of different reasons. So you cannot just say, oh, the women all here are like this. You cannot generalize the situation. Everybody is different. And two people cannot work together, but maybe you will be the partner for that person. So I think we just have to get back to our roots, be patient, and be open and willing to date people from here.
Perfectly said. Thank you so much. Um, all of this we just talked about. We can go deeper, but really, these are the issues that we're facing. Is here in our mentality, the way that it has been kind of imprinted a long time ago. And when you look at all of us, all of our communities are suffering from the same thing. So there's a tendency to think that somebody who is better, whether that you are a man or a woman, someone better is somewhere, and that somewhere is Africa. And you just need to go back to that person and, you know, get it. Like you said already, um, we need to go back to our root. And maybe we're not going to go back in order, but for two of you, do you guys think so? We have to go back to our root to kind of, you know, go through this and bring ourselves back and realize that we have our own people here to date, to get to know, to not generalize, like you said, not to generalize, but, you know, get to see people. Do you guys see it the same way? Joyce?
Um, so I don't want us to come from a place of, you know, assuming that, you know, the people that have gone back home and found their loved ones and started a life together, that they are having challenges, or that that it's a bad thing, right? Because every relationship is different, and they could be having different experiences. I know people that have gone back home, they brought their spouses here, and and their relationship is thriving and is a healthy relationship. I know people that have found, you know, partners here, but then their relationships could be thriving or could be toxic and hostile. So I think maybe we could point out a few challenges that come with, you know, having to go back home and bring a spouse, but we can't assume that every or most of the people that have gone back home uh, and brought, you know, their spouses and partners, that their relationships are not thriving, right? So I think there's certain things we can control and those that we cannot control. When somebody chooses to go back home, they have all the right to go back home. When they choose to, find partners here, that is okay too. However, knowing that, understanding some of the challenges that come from, or that stem from having to go back home is something that we could discuss, so that whoever now thinks about going back home, they can do their homework. They can, be a little bit more careful and cautious before they take these decisions.
Um, and is it the same thing for you?
So good question. So like I said, every relationship is different, but I think what I find is that, like Nemata, yeah, she made a very good point. She said that you're gonna go back home, but then also you're bringing that person into the same environment where you've been living. Now remember, each one of us that has moved here, to the Western world, we went through a culture shock, right? So that is going to be true for your partner and spouse that you're going to bring from back home. Now, marriage and relationships are come with their own challenges. They are beautiful, but they come with their own challenges. So it's almost like a double-edged sword. Two things are happening at the same time. There is the culture shock that this person will have to go through while they are integrating themselves into the new culture, but there's also the learning curve that comes with now, learning about their spouse, the commitment to know and really build that relationship. So it can be doubly hard for that person, even though when they were going into that, when they were venturing into that whole process, they thought maybe it would be easier, but the reality is that it's not as easy as probably they could have thought. So that's one of the reasons.
Absolutely, perfectly said. And to our brother, do you see it the same way? Just before we can put it behind us.
I think we should take everybody's passport and just block the borders and then keep everybody here.
That was my solution, but yeah.
Yeah, just make sure that nobody goes anywhere. All right. Yeah, right. So, Sister Nemata, is it? Nemata, oh my goodness. Where are you from?
I'm from Sierra Leone.
Oh, it says Sierra Leone, okay. All right. That's a point that you raised about, that, the expectations when people go back to Africa and then they're bringing somebody. And the reason why, like we were talking about, that people do that is because they're saying, well, giving an example, I can't remember who gave the example. Is it Joy? When the example was that, men sometimes, they go back and they're thinking that, I want a woman who will do A, B, C, D. And which is one of some of the reasons and why people do that. The problem though, as you pointed out, is that you bring that person here. Yes, you found them in that environment in Africa, being who they were, and you were able to coexist in Africa because, as a man who wants to provide, and as a man who wants to be in control, it worked. But then you bring them to this environment where it usually requires both of you almost doing the same thing. And then you still end up being with the same challenges that you were trying to run away from here, and going back. So I know that's the reason that people do that. But I think there has to be, and this forum is a good thing that we have this forum for education and just letting people know that it doesn't matter where you are. I talk to people about raising kids and, they say, oh, in Canada, it's so tough to raise kids. I'm like, it doesn't matter. You could be at the North Pole. If you're principled, you're principled. If you know what your values are, you know what your values are. It doesn't matter where you are. The only problem is that people don't want to adapt. So they try and find the easy way around situations. And so it doesn't matter you bring a wife here, a husband from there. They'll come here and they'll be like, well, this is the life that we have here. And so as a man, you also I just been to work. I just came back. I'm tired. You worked after shift. So you got to do dishes. And the man's like, whoa, wait a minute. That's not what I married you for. You're supposed to do dishes. But she could do it back home because the man was the sole provider. So,
exactly.
So I think what we need to work at is training people to adapt and realize that the one thing that has to work is not the environment, but it is the person. You as an individual, you have to know what your values are, what your principles are. And in that regard, it won't really matter. I mean, there's some things, yes, that might matter, but in the overall picture of things, it won't matter where you find a spouse, whether in the deepest part of the ocean or wherever, whether she's a mermaid. If you don't sort out your own thinking and be able to adapt, because even Africa, Africa used to be like 10 years behind, things that happen in North America, wherever in Africa, we were just coming up. But now it's like, it's almost the same thing. So,
exactly.
It's not no different, but it's just that people have to work on their mindset and change. And, there's people here who can help. We have more of these discussions and work on how people think, because the mindset is the problem. It don't matter who you're with. You could be the most beautiful person, but if you made a dump truck, then you're gonna have a problem. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So we need to work at doing that. So that would be my assessment on, you know, what would be the best solution. You know, the more we talk about these things, the more we raise awareness and education, then it won't matter where they find, like Joy said, like, you know, people can find whatever they want, but I think it'll make it easy for them, because then their expectations don't get shattered, because some relationships are just dying because you thought you could find a wife back home who would help here, and then they come here, they're like, hey, it's not working. And so it doesn't matter where you are. So that's my take on that.
Thank you so much, guys. This is really a very important topic to talk about, because there's so much we can talk about in this area. And I headed that we do not have a lot of time left. I think the info that you guys provided will go a long way, and perhaps make somebody think about all of this at once, instead of just running around and you know, kind of focus on your mindset and think that that's how you're going to solve things. So when it comes to us, we have to educate ourselves, basically. And this is, I think, is just going to be one of the tools that we can use to make awareness about the things that we make, or the mistakes that we make on a daily basis. I want to say thank you to all of you for joining Diversity TV today.